Ta tale, a tale, let it be told. On the morning the harmattan scraped chalk lines across the sky, a voice in Class 2B rose like a kettle about to sing. It belonged to Safia, a girl whose vowels wore the north like jewelry and whose consonants kept the rhythm of markets, where 3 languages bargain over the price of 1 tomato. She stood to read a passage from the civics book. Citizenship is... Citizenship, interrupted up Mr. K, the English teacher, smiling the kind of smile that likes an audience. He tapped his ear. Say it again with your tongue dressed properly. Laughter grew in the room the way mold grows on lazy bread. Safia's cheeks, 2 small suns, tried not to set. On the blackboard, the chalk sentence waited for its verb the way a village waits for rain. The talking drum under the mango tree outside. Every school has one, even if it looks like a custodian's bucket. Muttered, watch this tongue, watch this teacher, watch the day learn its lesson. That evening, under the veranda where broomsticks lean like elders listening to gossip, Grandmother Hawa wrapped her head tie twice, the way one wraps a proverb before serving it. She said to Sophia, Child, water does not apologize to stones for the song it makes. Your tongue is a river that knows many names for fish. She took out a priesty calabash that had attended more meetings than the headmaster and traced circles on its rim. Tomorrow you will speak like yourself. Next week you will speak in a hall with lights. The week after, the same man who mocked you will adjust his ears to fit your words. The hall with lights? Sophia laughed, bright and broken at the edges. Grandmother, I can't even read in class without being made into a joke. Hawa smiled the way old baobabs smile at saws, kindly but without fear. We will teach the hall to be your courtyard. If this tale finds you, don't let it pass like dust. Like a mace, to carry the drumbeat. Share with someone whose voice was once weighed and found different. And comment. Where are you reading from and what time is it? Your city palace time helps Part 2 travel without losing its way. The mocking chalk and the calabash that answered back. Bring your ears to the shade, listener. The school was Takarama State Secondary. A low, proud set of buildings painted the color of sunsets mixed with sweat. Geckos held staff meetings on the walls. Lizards did push-ups like overachievers. The headmaster's office smelled like ink that had never forgiven a paper for being thin. In Class 2B, 28 bodies practiced the art of sitting, and at the front, Mr. K practiced the art of being taller than his shadow. Mr. K's full name was Kwaku Kwate, but students, being poets by necessity, had cropped it to a consonant because it fitted his teaching style, sharp, quick to scratch. He loved grammar the way some people love the feel of authority on their tongues. He loved standard English the way a broom loves a floor. Vigorous without romance, he had learned his vowels from a radio host who spent his career polishing colonial dust into shine, and he mistook shine for light. Safia stood to read, because reading is what the register says children must do to earn tomorrow. Her accent is carried Sahel dust and market laughter. The ruts curled like a tamarind, the tha dressed as tune when no one was looking, and sometimes even when they were. She read with care, not fear care, the way a woman balances water on her head in a crowded path. Citizenship is a voice given to many, to use together, to build. Citizenship, Mr. K said again, as if the room hadn't heard the first time. Repeat correctly. Citizenship, she repeated, choosing not to fight the Zeus that likes to be a sore in her mouth. Mr. K sighed the sigh of men who confuse their comfort with the common good. We cannot win debate trophies with that mouth, he said, in the same tone you use to tell a child her shoes are on the wrong feet. Laughter. A boy called Pa Kojo, who laughed like a paid clapper, added, unless the trophy also has an accent. The room broke into 2, those who laughed and those who remembered they had once been laughed at and kept quiet because memory is expensive. Safia sat. She did not cry. Her pen made small storms in her margin, circles, slashes, a boat. Mr. K went on about subject-verb agreement, while disagreement grew in the corners of the room like rain you pretend not to smell. At break, Safia found Amma, a friend who wore her hair like a committee of braids. I sounded like a broken radio, Safia murmured. You sounded like my mother calling me from the river, Amma said. Maybe the radio is broken. They laughed then, because girls are resilient in front of snacks. Outside, under the mango that has seen more elections than headmasters, the debate club sat in a circle, chaired by Miss Latte, a teacher of history whose arms could ferry books and justice at the same time. On a cardboard sign, Topic: Should schools enforce standard accents? Miss Latte had the habit of issuing topics like thunder issues warnings, with the hope people would do the right thing before the rain bullied them into it. Safia hovered at the edge like a cautious kite. She liked ideas. She collected them in the back pages of her exercise books, each scribble a goat she promised to feed later. She liked argument even more, because argument, when done with clean hands, is just truth asking for a glass of water. But today her tongue felt like a shoe that didn't belong to her foot. Come, Miss Latte said, eyes that census the shy. Sit. Safia sat. Opening proposition, Miss Latte called. Bismarck, a boy who ironed his uniform so precisely it made him late for class, stood and argued that standard accents help listeners from different regions understand each other. He had examples from radio and courtrooms, from airplanes where the sky prefers routine. He was correct the way math is correct, clean, necessary, indifferent. Opening opposition, Miss Latte called. Safia surprised herself and stood. Words bunched in her mouth, goats at a gate. She pictured her grandmother's calabash rim, the circles traced like rings on a tree that refuses to lie about its age. Madam Chair, honourable judges, and my friends, she began, voice quiet like the first promise a morning makes. An accent is a map. When you force one road on all travellers, you make it easier to get lost. Bismarck rolled his eyes politely, the way boys taught by fathers who own tailors roll their eyes when cloth speaks. The circle listened, heads tilted like teaspoons. Safia went on. Standard does not mean superior. It means agreed upon by a few loud rooms. My grandmother says, when you make soup, you do not throw away the spice because it refuses to be salt. Laughter here was different, soft, surprised, amused at its own fairness. Also, she added, surprising even the mango tree with her boldness, if the goal is understanding, then we must teach listening, not imitation. It is cheaper, kinder, and does not rob people of their hometowns. The club murmured. Miss Latte smiled with her whole face. Point to the opposition, she said, not because she was biased, she was, but because sense had stood up and asked to be counted. After, as bodies jostled for bean cakes at the canteen, Mr. K passed the mango. He eyed the circle like a dog eyes a cat that looks confident. Debate practice? He said to Miss Latte, voice friendly the way dry season is friendly to wells. Aye, she replied. We will enter the state qualifiers. With whose mouths? He asked, smiling without wonders. With ears first, she replied, and he walked away with the gait of a man who has never been invited to sit by a river and admit he doesn't know how to swim. That evening, Safia sat with grandmother Hawa. The old woman brought out the calabash again, the way elders bring out stories, not to impress, but to harvest. Hold, she said, this is the listening bowl. When fools mocked my frafra, I learned to place their words here, not in my chest. The bowl caught the heat and gave me the meaning. She tapped the rim. Wrong, wrong, wrong. Different sounds, same bowl. Safia cupped it, peered into its old scratches the way you look at a map that has survived being folded too many times. Grandmother, Mr. K says we cannot win debates with this mouth. You will win with it, Hawa said, but first we will oil it. She taught breathing, how to use the belly, not the throat. She taught pacing, how to stomp on the brake when meaning needs space. She taught grace, how to let another's point finish its prayers before you commence yours. Your accent is a dress, she said. We will iron it. We will not tear it apart to wear someone else's borrowed cloth. Over the next week, Safia became a student of air. She practiced with Amma, who rang a spoon on a glass whenever Safia ran. She practiced with Miss Latte, who made her repeat sentences about empire and reign until the words tasted like their histories. She practiced with the calabash, speaking into it, and then listening to her own voice the way fishermen listen to water returning what was thrown at it. The state qualifiers were 2 weeks away. Names were to be chosen by each school. Mr. K presided over the internal tryout with the seriousness of a passport officer who suspects Joy is trying to cross a border. The topic on the board: resolved. Schools should penalize students who refuse to speak in standard accents during formal presentations. It was as if the universe had decided to step into the ring and take its shirt off. Pairs went up, arguments danced, stumbled, recovered. When it was Safia's turn, Mr. K checked his watch. "Make it short," he said. "We are behind schedule." "Time bends for truth," Amma muttered under her breath like a charm. Safia faced the room, the same room that had laughed 2 Tuesdays ago, and did a small thing first. She placed the calabash on the desk. The class chuckled. "Madam Chair, judges, ladies and gentlemen," she began, voice steady. "I brought my grandmother because my school lacks elders." The room hushed, as if someone had discovered the mouth's emergency brake. She proceeded to lay out 3 points: mutual intelligibility, teach listeners to hear, provide captions, allow clarifying questions, asset framing, accents as evidence of multilingual brains that switch gears faster than a taxi driver in traffic, and equity, penalties punish poverty and distance, support punishes no one. She quoted a proverb: "The river has many sounds, yet it reaches the sea in one body." She switched briefly into Hausa, then Twit, then English, making one sentence wear 3 outfits without losing its job. "If you understood me," she said, "it is because your ears worked, not because my tongue begged." Silence, thick and shy. A boy near the window whispered, "Charlie." Mr. K cleared his throat, discovered it had become smaller, and declared, "Fine, you may join the squad as alternate. We need standard voices for the officials." He checked his list. Bismarck and Priscilla would be first speakers. Sophia would be bench, a wardrobe kept closed in case of rain. She smiled without cracking. Alternates learn patience the way markets learn Monday. After school, she went to the mango and told the drum, "We are going anyway." The drum told the wind told the leaves told Miss Latte, whose yes arrived before the sentence finished its shoes. At home, Grandmother Howard drew a circle on the floor with chalk. "This is the hall with lights," she said. "Practice until the circle forgets it is a circle." Sophia stepped in and out, speaking, listening, dropping her arguments into the calabash and hearing them splash into sense. On the Saturday before the qualifiers, the school held a mock debate in the assembly hall. Half the town came, because towns love free theatre, especially when it threatens the comfortable with tidy shake-ups. Mr. K acted as moderator, rubbing the microphone with his thumb as if hoping diction would rub off. Bismarck, crisp as a secret, spoke first for the proposition. He was good, clean, confident, the accent of a TV anchor who thinks the camera is a mirror he deserves. Then, mid-second speaker. Priscilla's voice failed. The last harmattan had left sand in her chest. Her throat decided now was the time to collect rent. She sat down mid-sentence, cheeks wet, not from shame, but from the treachery of her own body. The hall held its breath like a choir confused by a new conductor. "Alternate," Miss Larty said. "You're up." Safia walked to the podium as if coming to collect her grandmother's water. Mr. K flinched, but had run out of procedural weapons. She adjusted the mic, which squealed like a child snatched from a stolen nap, and let the hall's hush settle in her lungs. "Let me begin," she said, though rolling like a warm tire, "by inviting your ears to work for their food." A ripple of laughter, the friendly kind. "Today we are not discussing whether accents exist. We know they do. We are discussing whether we punish children for the footprints of their homes on their tongues." She laid bricks, function over fashion. Does the message reach? Accommodation over assimilation. Schools should equip, not erase. Efficiency myths. Penalties do not speed comprehension, practice does. She told a story of Hausa traders who negotiate prices using words that never pretended to be English and yet move mountains of yams. She quoted the Constitution's clause, everyone ignored until now, about the right to culture and language. She offered a concession, a unit on audience design, the art of choosing words that understand the listeners who will hear them. "We can teach standard as a bridge," she said, "not as a whip." She ended with a small performance, the same sentence said 3 ways. "Open the window." First in smooth standard, then with her grandmother's lilt, then in a playful mimicry of Mr. K's crispness. Each time she opened the window behind the podium. Third time lucky, the shore breeze walked in and cooled the hall. "Meaning?" she said, and sat. The hall laughed. Then it clapped. Then it stood. Mr. K blinked, as if a chalkboard had argued back and won. He chose not to speak for a full 27 seconds, which Amma later recorded as a school record. That night, under the veranda, Hawa oiled the calabash with she. "The hall liked your river," she said. Safia placed her palm flat on the wood and felt the day's small storms die. "Grandmother," she whispered, "the qualifiers are next. The hall will be bigger. The lights will be proud." "Lights are only trapped sun," Hawa said. "You have the sun. Go trap it." A tale, let it be told. The road to the hall with lights and the day the drum took notes. The state qualifiers took place in Aquantia Civic Center, a building that tried to look modern and succeeded the way a goat succeeds at ballet. Earnest, endearing, a little off. Debaters from 10 schools arrived, carrying folders, hope, and the delicate arrogance of youth. Coaches carried whistles and aspirin. Judges carried pens like they wanted to spear carelessness. The topic drawn from the brown envelope the way destinies are drawn from ancestral pots. This house would prioritize communication effectiveness over accent conformity in schools. The drum under the eaves grinned. It loves a topic that could have been crafted by a grandmother. Mr. K fussed over Bismarck's tie until the knot confessed. He fussed over Priscilla's water bottle until it had no choice but to be full. He did not fuss over Safia, because ignoring is a sort of fussing that people do to feel innocent about their choices. Round 1. Takarama versus Eastridge. Proposition: Eastridge, sleek as a brochure. Opposition: Takarama. Bismarck opened elegantly, his rars trimmed like hedges outside embassies. He pitched standardization as the road without potholes. Safia, second opposition, rose when her turn arrived. She began with Andrei und exercise. "Close your eyes," she told the judges, even though judges fear closing eyes in public. "Hear the sentence. The child has eaten." She said it in 3 accents, hers, Bismarck's, and a rural lilt everyone recognized from aunties who live where the road ends, but wisdom does not. "Open your eyes," she said. "Which child ate?" Laughter. "Exactly. The meaning did not change. Our work is to help ears catch meaning quickly, not to force mouths to betray their villages." She cited research from the ministry newsletter, Miss Lati had smuggled it into her bag like contraband sense, about comprehension training, improving scores across regions. She pulled out a small listening card. 3 questions listeners can ask. Can you repeat? Can you rephrase? Can you write it? And argued that instruction time saved by penalizing accents is fiction printed on glossy paper. Takarama 121. Mr. K did not smile with his mouth, but his ears twitched. He took notes that looked like apologies trying to learn to spell. Round 2. Takarama versus Northern Star. Here came a boy whose accent sounded like the savannah reading poetry. The motion had them switch sides, Safia speaking for. Prioritizing effectiveness over conformity this time did a thing judges pretend to dislike but secretly respect. She code-switched Maun, mid-argument to show understanding, then translated herself. When I said, Karbi Sakona, she explained, I asked, receive my message, not rename my mouth. She turned hot audience design had choice into a drumbeat. If your audience struggles, slow down. If your audience is mixed, choose the road everyone can walk, but let your souls remember home. They won 3-0. Eastridge scowled, Northern Star clapped, the way wrestlers clapped the person who threw them and taught them something about the floor. Between rounds, Mr. K cornered Safia with a question he asked like a favor, but that smelled like a concession. "How did you keep your sentences so clear?" She showed him the whole breathing full marks in her notes. Slashes where commas rest, dots where periods drink water. She showed him the emphasis D underlines. Meaning receives weight. Accent receives comfort. He nodded, a craftsman accepting a new chisel. "Good," he said almost kindly, and walked away before the habit of sarcasm could drag him back by the collar. Final round to decide who goes to be state finals cues at the capital. Takarama versus Coastline Grammar. The hall filled with arpent lights that imagined themselves stars. The moderator adjusted a microphone that squealed like a goat who disliked the butcher. The drum under the eaves wrote in the dust, "Keep your balance." Bismarck opened with a strong case for effective communication training. Coastline answered with the sharpness of children coached by radio uncles. Priscilla held steady through her second speech, though her voice threatened a mutiny. She tamed it with sips and pauses. Safia, third opposition, delivered the rebuttal like a midwife who has learned the difference between shouting and strong hands. She stitched holes with examples of classrooms where teachers stopped docking marks for accent errors and started grading for clarity, structure, evidence. Scores went up, shame went down. She wielded the proverb like a knife that cuts vegetables, not skin. A river with many stones sings better. The judges conferred in the language of ticks and whispers. The hall breathed. The drum scratched. "Let them remember the calabash." "Winners, Takarama State Secondary," the moderator announced, voice believing itself the sun. "Best speaker, Safia Abdul Hawa." Noise. Noise like zinc roofs in rain. Noise like girls discovering caramel. Mr. K clapped once, the kind of clap you give a child who has run farther than you told her to, and returned with all her teeth. Miss Latte whooped like a woman the state should study for national morale. Safia didn't cry on stage. She saved it for the mango tree at home, where she pressed her forehead to the bark and let the salt teach humility to triumph. Grandmother Hawa came slowly, cane in one hand, her calabash etudes in the other. She set the bowl at the foot of the tree and said, "Pour." Safia poured her story into the bowl, every laugh, every flinch, every breath learned and given. The bowl took it the way earth takes rain, without argument, with gratitude. "Now," Hawa said, "there were state finals. The hall with more lights, the judges with tighter shirts, the microphones with no shame. You will go and teach them your river." In the weeks before the finals, Takarama trained like a choir that had discovered harmony is a muscle. Mr. K, caught by the gravity of success, underwent a small correction. He started listening. He brought metronomes to enforce pace, not accent. He printed listening cards scored from Safia's idea and placed them on desks like small mirrors. He developed a new classroom habit. When a student laughed at an accent, he made them summarize the content of what they had mocked. Many jokes died young and were not mourned. He invited an older radio host, Uncle T. Gusser, who had learned that radios are useless unless villages trust the voice. Uncle T taught addiction without deracination. How to let vowels stretch a little less without letting them starve. How to round consonants like stones in a river smoothing itself. "We do not become other people to be heard," Uncle T said. "We become clearer versions of ourselves." Safia also did her own anthropology of ears. She recorded herself speaking a paragraph in different paces and played them for the seamstress, the barber, the imam, the cocoa seller. She took notes. When did they frown? When did their faces relax? She discovered something the thickest pedagogy sometimes forgets. The community wants to understand you. It just needs time and helpfulness. She adjusted her scripts accordingly. The day before travel, the school gathered in the hall. The headmaster presented Bismarck and Priscilla with blazers that smelled like storage and victory. He gave Safia a blazer too. It fit as if the cloth had decided to apologize. Mr. K stood up to give remarks. His mouth tried to find the old path, his heart suggested a new one. He took it. I said 2 weeks ago, he began slowly, that we cannot win trophies with certain mouths. He glanced at Safia. Sometimes teachers repeat errors louder than students. I am learning to lower my voice and raise my ears. If this school wins at the capital, it will be because we learned in how to hear. Go. He looked down. The hall, surprised, remembered how to be gentle with men who are late to wisdom but arrive sweating. They travelled by bus to Osu State Hall, the capital's auditorium, which wore red velvet and pride. Other teams arrived in shoes that wanted the floor to respect them. Takarama arrived in shoes that wanted the floor to be kind. The topic from the envelope. This house believes that embracing linguistic diversity strengthens national unity. The drum under the portico, who had travelled in spirit because drums know shortcuts, hummed. Well then. Round 1 at the finals, Safia faced Kita Royal, a team that could turn silence into applause with a look. She opened second for the proposition. Her structure was a house you would trust in the rain. Definition, mechanism, benefits, responses. But her roof was story. Grandmother Hawa counting coins in 3 tongues at the market and never cheating. A nurse calming a patient by switching to their mother's words. A parliamentarian in a tie more expensive than wisdom, misunderstanding an elder and passing a bad policy. She ended with, unity without dignity is cattle. Unity with dignity is nation. Judges nodded in the small way, eyes tilting, pens pausing. Coastline Grammar, their old rivals, sneaked a smile that said, well played, old enemy. In the semi-final, a judge asked a hostile phone point of information. Isn't your defense of accents just a defense of laziness? Why should the majority bend? Safia accepted the point with the grace of a door opening. Madam, bending is not breaking. Flexibility is how bridges survive wind. And anyway, who is the majority ass in a classroom with 20 regions in it? The judge tried to scowl, but her mouth made respect instead. Takarama reached the final. The hall became loud with the mathematics of hope. Mr. K drank water like a new religion. Miss Lati sat still and let her eyebrows do all the cheering. Motion for the final. This house would make listening literacy mandatory in secondary schools. The gods of envelopes were mischievous or kind or both. Safia's eyes widened. Bismarck whispered, "It's your river," which in debate means, "It is your kill." Bismarck opened with the architecture of the policy. Curriculum units, assessment rubrics, teacher training modules that teach active listening, accent comprehension, summarization, clarifying questions. Coastline replied with budget horrors and fear that exams would explode into unmarkable chaos. Safia's turn. She carried the calabash mamas to the lectern and placed it there like a small planet. The timekeeper frowned. The audience smiled. "What is this?" she asked, hand on the rim. "A bowl. Also a classroom." She tapped it. The sound sang. "When I speak into it, it does not correct me. It what receives. It returns what I said, not what it wished I had said. Listening literacy is this, teaching schools to be bowls before they become blades." She gave 3 mechanisms. 1. Ear labs. Weekly sessions where students hear different accents reading the same passage and practice summarizing meaning. 2. Talkback cards. Listeners hold cards that say, repeat, rephrase, write. 3. Bench of tongues. A physical bench in each school engraved. Every accent is an archive, where anyone mocked for speech may sit 10 minutes without losing attendance, and the mocker must sit 1 hour and write what they learned. She then advanced 2 impacts. Equity children from far places stop paying tax with their tongues. Innovation multilingual brains make better problem solvers. The country that can listen can lead, she concluded. If we teach our ears now, our policies later will not be allergic to the people they claim to govern. Rebuttals flew. Coastline tried to paint chaos with a wide brush. Safia gave them de science in bullet points. They tried to claim standard accent equals national pride. She replied, "Our pride must wear kente, woven from many looms." The timekeeper's bell rang like a polite auntie who has cooked enough and wants you to leave the kitchen before you burn the stew. The judges left to confer in a room where air conditioners pretend to be impartial. The hall waited. Mr. K sat on his hands. Grandmother Hawa, who had secured a pass by telling the usher she was a walking library, sat very straight. The assembly of ears, the bench of tongues, and the day a teacher learned to bow on Monday. The son reported to duty like a civil servant who has finally found a job he loves. The assembly ground at Takarama shimmered with uniforms, whispers, and the low electricity of triumph. The Truffine sat on a table draped with cloth that tried hard to be gold. The calabash sat beside it, unbothered by status. Headmaster cleared his throat in A-flat. "Students," he intoned, "we have returned with honor state champions." The crowd cheered, a sound that makes dust dance. "Now our English master has a word." He stepped back the distance between old habits and new opportunities. Mr. K approached the microphone like a man approaching a river he once mocked for being wet. He looked at Sophia, at Bismarck, at Priscilla. He looked past them at the mango tree which had been promoted over the weekend to assistant head of wisdom. He took a breath that changed his back's mind about stiffness. "I once told a student," he began, voice quiet, "that our school could not win trophies with that mouth. I said it because I worshipped Polish. I forgot to worship meaning. I confused comfort with clarity. Now I have learned a new subject. It is called listening." He gestured to the calabash. "This bowl has been teaching me." He stood aside. Safia stepped forward with a sheet titled "An Assembly Motion," in handwriting that liked straight lines but respected detours. "Motion," she read, "that Takarama State Secondary establishes the PI bench of tongues and adopts the ear labs on curriculum trial." The school council, 3 teachers, 4 students, 1 prefect who had never lost a key, nodded like their necks enjoyed justice. "Seconded," said Miss Larty, with a grin that could colonize despair and plant yams. "All in favor?" Hands rose. Some were slow, all were counted. So they built it, the round bench of tongues, from a slab of Iroko wood that the carpentry club sanded until it remembered sunlight. Io's cousin. A sign painter who believed brushes are just smaller drums painted the proverb proposed by Sophia. Every accent is an archive. The bench sat under the mango, whose promotion became official. The sign painter added a small badge to one branch. Rules were simple. If a student mocked another's accent, they would sit easy for an hour and write on what they learned while listening to voices they once treated as a joke. If a student felt mocked, they could sit for 10 minutes of paid listening time. Not a punishment, but a stipend for dignity. Teachers who slipped could sit too. Mr. K tried the seat first without being asked, because leadership tastes best eaten humble. The first week brought 3 sits. Pa Kojo. Laughter without comprehension. A fua with the fast mouth. Misquoting a gargoyle and turning it into comedy. And Mr. Mensa, the PE teacher, imitating a boy's zongo cadence while telling him to run faster. They sat. The bench did what wood does. It quieted noise and invented thinking. The Sati Ear Labs began on Thursdays. Insa Ear Lab. The class listened to 4 recordings of the same paragraph read by 4 accents: rural, urban, northern, coastal. Students filled a pass comprehension sheet. Key idea? Difficult words? Questions to ask? They then formed listening teams, where each student asked one talk-back carded question. "Can you rephrase that? Can you give an example? Can you write that key term?" Laughter softened into focus. Focus into competence. Even the noisiest discovered that silence can be an extrovert when truth arrives. One afternoon, the regional papers house visited. The reporter came with a pen that liked to eavesdrop and took photos of the bench, the bowl, the plaque. He asked Mr. K for a quote, expecting the usual teacher victory speech about discipline and syllabus coverage. Mr. K pointed to Safia. "Ask the best speaker," he said. The reporter's eyebrows wrote theatre. Safia gave him 1 sentence only. "We learned to keep the bridge and widen the road." It landed on the front page without needing to dress up. Emails began to arrive in Miss Larte's inbox. which had been empty for years except for reminders to submit exam questions. Schools asking for the ear lab templates, a community radio wanting an interview, a teacher from a distant state sending a voice note confessing, "I have been Mr. K for 20 years, how did you change him?" Miss Larty replied, "We gave him a bench." At home, Grandmother Howe became moderately famous. Children came with notebooks to stare at the calabash. She would place it on their heads gently, saying, "Now your ears are wearing a bowl. Speak." They spoke. She made them listen to themselves. The goat under the neem tree learned the schedule and bleated in approval, but not all hearts graduate on time. A group of older boys from a neighboring school began to imitate Safia's voice on the bus, turning her triumph into a carnival. One afternoon they blocked the path, mouths full of poverty disguised as humor. "Best speaker," one sneered, rounding his vowels like a colonial ghost off duty. "Say something for us. We want to be educated." Safia's hands trembled, not with fear, with anger that hadn't yet found a translator. She opened her mouth to retort, but Amma, who had been growing thunder quietly, stepped between. "Do you have ears?" she asked the boys, brandishing a talkback card, like a matador with fabric intelligence. "Can you repeat, hoy? Can you rephrase, hoy? Can you write, hoy?" They blinked, then laughed, because ignorance often tries to laugh its way out of homework. Mr. K happened to be crossing the courtyard, or destiny planned the route. He saw the blockade, saw the cards, saw the bad theatre. He walked up and did what many adults forget they have the right to do. House asked names, then he listened to the mimicry without flinching, like a doctor who has decided to hear the disease describe itself. "Good," he said evenly. "You can imitate. Can you understand? Tell me what she argued in the finals." Silence. "Bench," he said, pointing. "The sign says archive. Go and read." They sat. One tried to sneak a joke into the wood. The wood refused, being literate. After an hour, Mr. K invited them to the ear lab as guests. 2 came. They left with quiet faces and the private fatigue you get after moving furniture in your mind. Then came Founders' Day at the school. The program needed a keynote. The headmaster invited a local politician. He sent regrets that smelled like perfume. The staff proposed Mr. K. He proposed Safia. The school, learning to surprise itself, agreed. Safia wrote a speech titled, "The Ear is a Classroom." She practiced into the calabash until the wood began to look more polished than the plaque. On the day, she wore simple cloth and a bracelet grandmother insisted had powers. Its power was that it had been worn by women who did not apologize to rivers. She stood under a chow canopy, whose job was to keep rain humble. "Founders," she began, "built this school with the hands. Today we will build it further with ears. She told the story of Class 2B without shaming names, only shaming habits. She thanked the bench for being a wooden teacher. She thanked Mr. K by name and by newness. She asked the student body to try an experiment. Accent Amnesty Fridays. One day each week where teachers offer extra marks for clarity and courage, not for accent, and students are encouraged to bring a proverb from home to use in a sentence that the class must decode. "We will become translators for one another," she said, "and one day perhaps for the country." It passed like a budget that had already been spent in people's hearts. Fridays became warm with strange vowels and proud consonants. The class collected proverb passports. Little booklets where teachers stamped a page when a student brought a proverb and made it work for math, for science, for literature. Some proverbs did not behave. They were sent back to the village for discipline. Most behaved so well that even the stubborn subjunctive in English tried to learn from them. Mr. K found joy in a new sport, catching chairman and meaning wound and letting meek manner chance breathe. He even corrected the headmaster one day respectfully when a staff memo used the phrase broken English. "No language is broken," he wrote in the margin, "only people who refuse to listen." The headmaster circled the line and put a smiley that looked like a mango. At the end of term, the Bauma State Minister for Education arrived with motorcade drama and a scarf that wanted to be photographed. He had heard, from a cousin of a cousin as policies travel, that a school had installed a bench and removed a blindness. He sat on the bench of tongues out for the cameras. It made a better photo than his usual ribbon cuttings. He announced a new small thing, listening literacy pilot, in 20 schools. It was not a revolution, it was a beginning. People clapped like they were planting seeds. That evening, under the mango, the school held a small closing rite the way fishermen hold salt, to remind water it has partners. Uncle T read aloud the names of students who had sat on the bench and what they had learned. Io served puff-puff shaped like commas. Bismarck admitted he had once judged sense by shine and was grateful the contest had made him speak slower and hear faster. Priscilla said her voice had taught her to negotiate with its own weather. Finally, Mr. K spoke. He did not hold the microphone the way he used to hold grammar. He held it like a volunteer. I used to think a good teacher is a sculptor who chisels accents into statues, he said. Now I think a good teacher is a cute gardener of ears. You do not yell at a seed for sounding like soil. He bowed, a real bow, the kind that makes your neck honest. Grandmother Howa lifted the calabash for a last sound. The drum answered from the ground, gong, gong, gong. Safia placed the Best Speaker plaque inside the bowl, just for a moment, so that Victory and Listening could get married in public.